Sometimes the people closest to us, our own siblings, can be the ones who hurt us the most. This is the story of how I discovered the painful truth that my siblings were using me, hiding secrets behind smiles and laughter. What started as confusion turned into a battle for my voice, my safety, and ultimately, my freedom. Dad spoke quietly with Mom in the living room, discussing every move with the meticulousness of a general at war. Gabriel laughed at the punishments I received, finding amusement where I felt only shame. Meanwhile, Diana constantly complained about the attention I attracted, as if the wounds I carried on my skin were a form of seeking the spotlight. Those conversations, every word, every whisper, were imprinted in the audio files of my little hidden recording, carefully kept like a silent weapon. But there was more. In a nighttime file, my father's voice was clear as he rehearsed with my mother on how to handle the interview with the social workers. They practiced answers, strategic pauses, invented details about my worrisome behavior, and my emotional fragility. At one point, Dad simulated an emotional breakdown, testing where to break his voice to seem sincere. Mom, with the coldness of a theater director, guided him. More hesitation, less confidence. It has to sound like it's hard for you to say. The most chilling thing? They knew about Catherine's arrival, the caseworker, even before she was assigned. The system, I thought, had already decided which side to take. In silent nights, when everyone was asleep, Dad sat in the dark living room, talking to a shadow, perhaps to his dead father. His words, recorded without his knowledge, were full of frustration and legacy. He spoke of discipline as strength, honor as duty, breaking weak links to strengthen the chain. For the first time, there was no anger in his voice, but a raw, almost childlike pain, an echo of wounds he had carried for decades. I later discovered that my mother had her own secret system, an old prescription card holder above the fridge. One evening, when Dad was on duty, I saw her pull it down. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the handwritten cards, each dated. I couldn't read what was written, but her expression shattered into silent tears. When she heard Dad's car in the driveway, she quickly put everything back, wiped her face, and put on her usual mask. When Grandma came to visit us for her monthly visit, she brought cookies and a tired smile. She had always been Dad's biggest supporter, praising his sense of duty and love for the family. But that time, when she saw me, something changed in her eyes, a flash of awareness. At dinner, she kept looking at me and Dad as if solving a puzzle. Later, while washing dishes, I confronted her. I showed her the bruises on my arms, fingerprints from Dad. Her hands froze in the soapy water. For a moment, I thought she would finally do something. But then she carefully dried her hands, caressed my face with a tenderness that smelled of surrender, and quietly said, "If I interfere, your father won't let me see any of you anymore." Her choice was clear, her neutrality, a betrayal I will never forget. With Gabriel, instead, I learned to play another kind of game. I used his guilt as leverage. I forgave him before he even apologized, smiled when he expected anger. His confusion opened paths for me. One day, taking advantage of a moment of weakness, I asked him for his phone with some excuse. To my surprise, the phone was full of evidence. Photos of my bruises, videos of family dinners, where Dad threatened with a honeyed voice, clips secretly recorded during punishment time. Gabriel documented everything, maybe out of remorse, maybe voyeurism. I met Dad's colleague, Officer McCatherine, by chance in a cafe where policemen had free coffee. I sat next to him, pretending to chat casually about the weather. When I mentioned Dad, his look tensed. He murmured that some colleagues had started to question the family situation. Nothing official, just gossip. But the tone of his discomfort told me the facade was beginning to crack. One day, Marcus passed me a paper during class change. Hidden in the bathroom, I read his college admission essay. It was titled, "Observing Injustice." And even though the names were changed, every word was a reflection of our home. It spoke of the guilt of those who witness, the cost of complicity, the desire to break toxic family patterns. It was both a confession and a declaration of intent. His pen had told my story better than I ever could. Then, from my mother's past, her sister Catherine resurfaced. She lived in another state, and they hadn't spoken in years. But she found out I don't know how about our situation, and offered to take care of me temporarily. Dad's reaction was immediate. He accused her of wanting to split us up, dredged up old divorce papers, discredited her mental stability. Every step toward freedom seemed to trigger a trap. Mrs. Lee, the teacher who had tried to help me, began to fall apart under the weight of legal fees. She had hired an expert lawyer, but Dad relied on the police union's legal fund. The resource gap showed in every hearing, and when Mrs. Lee had to be absent from school, she was replaced by a cousin of Dad's, a woman who seemed more interested in gathering information than teaching. During that time, I started sleeping in Mrs. Lee's laundry room. She couldn't legally host me, but never closed the back door. And if I happened to be inside when she was already asleep, who could blame her? The sound of the dryer had become my lullaby. Meanwhile, Dad transformed my room as part of the new beginning. Pastel yellow paint, motivational posters, new furniture. He posted photos on social media with captions full of phrases like, creating healing spaces for troubled kids. The comments were full of hearts and applause. No one knew what that room really meant. Diana's mental health collapsed. She began covering her arms even in summer. I saw the cuts, parallel lines, neat, painfully intentional. During a dinner, her sleeve slipped and everyone fell silent. Later, she followed me to the bathroom, crying, and accused me of being the cause of everything. The scars, she said, were my fault. If only I had kept quiet. Mrs. Lee, with her brave gesture, had triggered a chain reaction. Another teacher, Mrs. O'Catherine, was investigated for failing to report suspected abuse. Her husband blamed her. Their family fell apart. And I kept recording, convinced that breaking the cycle was worth that collateral pain. One afternoon, Gabriel found me alone. With lowered eyes, he asked if I was remembering wrong, if my wounded mind was inventing things. I didn't answer. I handed him a sheet with a transcript of a recording where he himself laughed during one of my beatings. I looked at him silently. He understood. One rainy night, while the sound of the storm drowned out voices, Dad spoke on the phone in a low, tight tone. I recorded everything. He said, "The boy has too much imagination. He says he records. But even if he did, who would believe him? He's disturbed, unstable." Then he laughed. That dry laugh that made me tremble. Every family has an anomaly. This is ours. Then a cold war began at home. No one spoke openly anymore. Diana avoided my gaze. Gabriel became nervous every time I turned on the phone. Mom more and more often had sudden headaches. And Dad seemed more interested in maintaining his public image than what was happening behind our doors. The social services had finally assigned a new assistant. Her name was Evelyn. She had tired but attentive eyes. When she came home for a one-on-one interview, she sat me down and said, "I'm not looking for someone to blame. I'm looking for the truth." So I handed her a USB stick with some excerpts of the recordings. She took it without questions. In her eyes, for the first time, I saw something that seemed like real interest. Maybe I thought something was about to change. But nothing happened quickly. Months passed like sand through fingers. Meanwhile, Dad had found new ways to show himself as a model parent. He attended parenting seminars, posted pictures with me at the park, quoted motivational phrases. On Instagram, we were the perfect family. In reality, my body still bore the marks of the lessons taught behind closed doors. When Evelyn came to school to interview teachers, Marcus spoke up for me. He openly talked about what he had seen, about the times I had slept in his car because I was afraid to go home. His words were precious, but made him a target. Dad found out, confronted him outside school. No one knew what they said, but Marcus came home with a black eye that said it all. My Aunt Catherine, meanwhile, had started a temporary custody procedure. She was summoned to a hearing, where she testified in my favor. She talked about my mother's past, the family dynamics that repeated themselves. Dad's lawyer tried to discredit her, but Catherine didn't waver. She was prepared, solid, a bulwark against the wind. The judge decided on a trial period. I could stay with my aunt for 6 weeks, monitored by a family assistant. When they took me from home, Dad didn't flinch. He only said, "She'll come back. Blood calls." And Mom silently handed me a box with some of my things without meeting my eyes. The first days with Catherine were strange. I couldn't sleep. I woke in the middle of the night, expecting to hear screams or doors slamming. She didn't ask me questions. Every morning she made breakfast, left the bathroom door open, as if to say there were no secrets. She had a dog, Toby, an old golden retriever who followed me everywhere. In her presence, I felt for the first time something that resembled peace. But the truce didn't last long. Dad started a smear campaign. He said Catherine was brainwashing me, that she wanted to take me away from my family for personal reasons. He sent letters to the court, local newspapers, anyone who would listen. He told stories of a deceived son, an unstable sister, a family destroyed by lies. Gabriel, crushed between loyalty and remorse, started sending me cryptic messages. Phrases like, "Be careful what you know," or "Dad knows about Evelyn." Then, he disappeared. No answers. Diana, instead, was seen by a teacher in the nurse's office. She had had a breakdown. She had started talking to the school psychologist, but Dad came to take her before she could say too much. Meanwhile, Evelyn was transferred, officially for internal reasons, but the timing was suspicious. The new assistant, Linda, was distant, cold. She seemed more interested in closing the case than understanding what was happening. When I told her about the recordings, she shrugged. Not everything we hear is sufficient proof. I realized that truth alone was not enough. In one of the darkest moments, I thought about ending it. I left a letter for Catherine, hidden in Marcus's book. It said, "If I can't win this battle, at least know I tried." But that same night, Toby barked until he woke Catherine, who found my semi-conscious body in the bathroom. She said nothing. She hugged me. She waited. Then she read me the first message I had sent her when I asked for help. I don't want to be afraid anymore of the one who calls me son. Those words saved me. The court set a new hearing. Dad's lawyers did everything to delay it. But Catherine, with the help of an association for abused minors, brought new witnesses: Marcus, Mrs. Braid, Lee, even McCatherine, Dad's former colleague. The recordings were finally accepted as evidence. One by one, the phrases Dad had said turned into judgments against him. During the last hearing, the judge listened to a clip where my father said, "It doesn't matter what he does. No one will ever believe him. He's just a kid who cries too much." And the judge, after a long silence, replied, "Maybe he cried too much, but today we are finally listening to him." The verdict was clear: temporary custody extended to 1 year, with the possibility of legal adoption by Catherine if family conditions did not substantially change. Dad temporarily lost parental rights. Mom did not object. She just looked up and said, "Maybe it's better this way." I moved permanently to Catherine's. I started a new school. No one knew who I was. I was just a kid like many others, but with a story tattooed on me. I wrote an essay for English class. I titled it "The Noise of Truth." It talks about how silence sometimes screams louder than any word. The teacher asked if it was made up. I smiled. "Partly," I answered. But the ending is still to be written. One evening, Catherine showed me a box with letters written by my mother as a girl. They spoke of a violent father, a home like ours. I understood then that chains don't break by themselves. They have to be cut, even if it hurts, even if they leave marks. Now, when I look at the past, I don't feel only anger anymore. I feel respect for that child who resisted, who gathered evidence, who risked everything to change the ending. I didn't come out unscathed, but I came out alive. And sometimes, living is already an act of rebellion. In the end, breaking free wasn't just about escaping the pain, it was about reclaiming my identity and my truth. My siblings' betrayal left scars, but it also fueled my strength. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that survival is an act of courage, and sometimes the hardest battles lead to the brightest new beginnings. Remember, your story matters. Don't let anyone silence your truth. Thanks so much for watching and listening to my story. If you've ever felt betrayed or trapped, remember you're not alone, and there is always hope. If this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss future stories of survival and strength. Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts or experiences. Until next time, stay strong and keep fighting your own battles. You've got this.